Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Teen Talk Central. In this week's episode, we're talking all about lessons I've learned from being an only child. If this is something that you can relate to or something you just want to learn more about, then definitely continue listening to this week's episode. Hey guys, it's Mia. Welcome back to another episode. This week's episode is about being an only child. I know we talked about this in last week's episode, and I mentioned that this week's episode would be on being an only child. So, I want to start off by saying yes, I'm an only child, and no, I did not have a lonely, sad childhood like some people think I had. I actually had a very fun childhood. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to tell you guys a couple lessons that I've learned that maybe not everyone would get if they lived with a sibling or, they were not an only child. So I think there's this stereotype that only children are spoiled and lonely and too independent. And being an only child comes with a lot of assumptions, but most of them actually miss kind of the full idea. And yes, certain things can be true for certain people. Obviously, I'm not gonna say it's not true, but there's a lot of things that are kind of under all of that, if that makes sense. So the first kind of stereotype I want to talk about is how we're kind of lonely or too independent. That's not really the case. It's more that we've learned how to be independent from such an early age. There are certain times where I had to entertain myself, and I didn't have my parents around me or my siblings to entertain me. Not that I was neglected, but just because my parents had work. So I had to learn how to have fun by myself and learn how to be creative or make my own entertainment. And I learned really early on in life how to be comfortable doing things alone. And sometimes I'll when I was in Boston over the summer, I would just go out by myself, and people would ask me oh, are you not scared to explore a new city by yourself? And I'm no, because this is so normal for me. Or going to the gym alone is so much fun for me. Or just being able to run errands on my own. It's such a nice independent feeling. And I've just learned how to do it from such a young age that it's natural for me to do it. And I really have a self-reliance on myself, which is really nice. I'm not relying on anyone else to do things or go out with me. I know there's some people who have siblings and they always need to be doing something with somebody, and I'm yeah, that cannot be me. And I've just learned how to spend time with myself, and I love just to be alone and do my own thing. And I don't know, I'm not a huge I need to be with my friends every single second of every single day. Obviously that's gonna be so much fun in college, but I'm also totally fine if you can't hang out to go with me to the gym in the morning or grocery shopping. I just love to be in my own little cute fairy world and don't have to worry about anyone else or pleasing anybody or time or anything. And it's so much fun. And the next one is the relationship with your parents. I think a lot of people think because you're an only child, you're so spoiled and whatever, but not really. I think obviously because I'm an only child, my parents spend more of their money on me, but that's just kind of the way it is. But I've learned how to have a really close relationship, and that we get to spend more time together, and it's not there's not as much pressure or expectation. That could also just be my parent thing. And I've also learned to navigate adult conversations from a really early age because I didn't have siblings. Obviously I would talk child at school or the slang or whatever, but I've always been told that I'm a good communicator, and I am really good at speaking to adults, and I think that is something that comes from being an only child. The next one, kind of along with independence, is just comfort of being alone. And again, we've talked about this before, but there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And I've built a really strong sense of self and finding my own hobbies and interests and routines that I like to do on my own that I don't need anybody else for. The next one is social skills and friendship. So for me, again, we've talked about this, but I don't really have a lot of close friends. My close friends all don't go to the same school as me, and I have learned that I don't need to have friends with me all the time. and I don't want to have friends with me. Not saying I don't like my friends. If my friends are listening to this, love you guys to death, but I've learned that friends can feel like a chosen family, and I like to choose my family very wisely. And I've learned how to build and maintain friendships intentionally because I care about the people I have in my life, because my family has been so close, and like I've just learned the type of people I do and don't want to have in my life. And if I don't want to have you in my life, I'm not going to make it a huge deal. I'm not going to, like make it this big thing. I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to, slowly distance myself. And like one day I'm just not going to be there if the effort is not reciprocated or something like that. And sometimes you need to put yourself out there more, because if you're an only child, sometimes you might not have the kind of like ability to like go out and like present yourself, because you're always like kind of in your own world, which is obviously great and amazing, and like love being in my own cute world. It's so fun. But sometimes you do just need to put yourself out there a little bit more. And if you want to learn how to make like friends in college, then definitely go back to my other episodes. It's great, good listens. But sometimes you just kind of need to put a little bit more effort, because as an only child, we've kind of learned to like keep to ourselves, because that's what we've been doing growing up, and there's no problem with that, but that's just a lesson that you might want to learn. And I think there's this idea that like we're spoiled, and like I just think that is a different scenario for everyone. But like for me, a lot of people probably think like, oh, she's so spoiled, like she gets whatever she wants, like she's going to a really expensive school and all this stuff. But it's really more about like, you have to be grateful for what you have in the moment. And like obviously, because I'm an only child, again, like my parents use their money on me, but that doesn't mean that I'm like spoiled or like I'm not grateful. Obviously I'm super grateful for everything that I've gotten and like everything I am gonna like get and have in the future. That's just kind of another point that I wanted to bring across. And then here's a couple downsides. Obviously, as much as I kind of just preached about how we are okay being like alone and like stuff like that, there's obviously certain times where there's moments of loneliness, and I know definitely in the future there's going to be certain times where I'm going to be lonely and sad, but that's like one of the things you get to learn, and like that's the part of having fun about being an only child, and I kind of love that, and I'm really excited, and like I can't wait to like explore the world on my own. And like I definitely think I'm a more independent person because of being an only child. And obviously I know that siblings have like a really strong support system, and like once they get older they're able to really connect and talk and stuff, and like I'm not gonna have that, which is gonna be okay for me, because I know I'm gonna figure it out in my own way, and like maybe I can talk to a friend about it or something. But obviously there's just something different, I think, about having a bond between your siblings, and that's something I'm never going to get to experience. But I do have a couple like sister-like friends, so that is great. And then I think there's this feeling or pressure to do everything right, because you're an only child, so like you are the one that you're the only one that can make your parents that proud. So there could be certain times where you're like, oh, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me to do something, but you don't have to feel that way. You just have to do what you can do best, and your best is always, sometimes your best is just not good enough, and, that's the harsh truth, but there you go. And ultimately, I just think being an only child really teaches you independence and self-awareness, and it's something that I don't see as much in people who have siblings. Obviously, it's a bit different per sibling case, but I feel like a lot of my friends that do have siblings, there is a little bit less independence, just because you're always, especially if you have a small age gap. If you have a larger age gap, that's a different story. But I think having a smaller age gap, sometimes I see my friends have a little bit less independence, and I think in terms of emotional maturity, I think it can just be different per person. And then in the end of the day, the biggest blessing about being an only child is that you have this ability to enjoy your own company, and you don't need to have people with you all the time, which is something that I think is harder for closer age siblings to understand and do. And that's totally okay. Not everyone needs to be able to have that ability, but I think it is a really good ability to have, and something I am really grateful that I have been able to do from such a young age. And yeah, I've been able to take these skills with me basically wherever I go. And being an only child really doesn't just define you, and like it shouldn't be a stereotype. And like whenever I meet people, like they'll be like, oh, I can tell you're an only child, and I'm like, oh, how? And they're like, you just give only child vibes. And I'm like, I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm gonna take that as good. But yeah, it doesn't really define you. It just shapes how you see independence, relationships, and yourself. And that's something really important that I just want everyone to remember, that, you know, it's great to be an only child. I'm sure it's great to have a sibling. It's great to be both, and we don't have to compare ourselves just because we are one or the other, because you can't choose to be both, obviously. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. Next week's episode is going to be a little bit of a more serious topic. We're going to be talking about grief and how to go through that while being in high school still, and what that experience has been like. Thank you guys so much for listening. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys next week for another amazing episode of Teen Talk Central. Bye.